Man, that was a riot. Hey everybody, it's Tracking Pat here in Costa Mesa, California at Rottweiler Performance. We're doing another episode of our series, The People Who Make, using TRAK CNC. And today we're going to meet Chris and his wife Mariel and learn a little bit about how they soup up these KTM motorcycles. What do you think about that?
Dude, you're hard to keep up with.
Man, I'll tell you what, these things are amazing. I haven't ridden one in a while and it was so much fun. Sorry to leave you back there in the dust, but I was just having a great time.
It's all good, we're used to it.
Fantastic. Well, you know, I was just telling the people out there in TV land about what you guys do here and want to get a little better idea. So what do you say we go inside and you show us around?
Let's do it.
Fantastic.
I believe you know my lovely wife, Mariel.
Of course I do.
Good to see you. Good to see you. How you been?
I've been great. Yourself? Got to kind of wait till my glasses kind of lighten up in here a little bit, so I'll take them off for a minute. But
Nice.
Anyway, really thanking you guys for having us in here and learning a little bit more about what you guys do. And we want to get the whole shebang, right? So we want to know how you started, how you got here, how we're involved in what you guys are doing, all the rest of that stuff, you know. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to start out by asking you a few questions. Of course, you know, I met you before you were Rottweiler Performance.
Well, Rottweiler Performance started, we designed an intake system for a motorcycle. And really the story is that when I was dating my lovely wife, Mariel here, I met her racing the Baja 1000 down in Mexico. And I bought a street bike, a Super Duke, to go down and see her because the border waits were really long. And I started tweaking with the street bike a little bit. And I developed an intake, as most, you know, racing fabricators do. You know, you kind of tweak with stuff and play around with things. And we took it to the dyno, and the intake system was wildly popular. Made a lot of horsepower, and a lot of people found out about it. And then we started making them, and we didn't know what to call the intake system. Originally, the name of the company was CPR Fabrications, which was Chris Parker Racing Fabrications. And mainly what I did was exhaust, high-end exhaust for Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches, that kind of thing. Intake systems for cars, but cars weren't really my passion. Motorcycles were my passion. And we didn't want to call the intake CPR, although it kind of fit. We just didn't like the acronym. So one day we fired up one of the motorcycles, and I just was racking my brain on what to call this thing. I wanted to give it some kind of clever name. And I whacked the throttle open, and it barked like a guttural bark like a dog, you know? And I kind of stood back and I looked at the bike and I said, well, the bike is black and it looks tough and it sits like this. You know, if that was a dog, what would it be? And I said, honey, we'll call it Rottweiler Intake Systems, you know, and that was it. Not even knowing the size that we would grow to today. None of this was even in our purview at all. It was just something that we were making on the side with an early TRAK machine. That was the very first machine that we used to do some of the original intakes, and it was the, gosh, what was that thing?
It was a TRAK Edge on an old Sharp milling machine.
TRAK Edge on an old Sharp, and I bought that thing out of Indiana for, I can't remember how much, and they shipped it out, and I was making them on that thing. And at first it was lunch money, and then it was lunch and rent, and it was lunch, rent, and employees, and 9 years later, here we are, and we're cranking. And it all kind of started with the TRAK machines, to be honest. That's the truth.
That is really cool, and I remember a lot of those conversations back then. In fact, I remember at the time when I asked you where the Rottweiler came from, I assumed you just had a dog because that's what everybody else thinks. And so where are we right now? Which part of the shop is this?
So this is our prep area right here. So this is where these two bikes right here are race bikes. So we're pretty much one of the only people in the country right now racing this model of motorcycle. So this is the hot new model from KTM, which is the KTM 790 Adventure. Okay, this is very popular right now. And basically our goal was to climb to the top of the mountain and plant our flag and say, we own this real estate, this is us. And the only way to really do that is to go out and race them. There's really nobody racing these things. It's a very unique kind of bike, but there's more and more associations and sanctioning bodies that are bringing on adventure classes. Because the adventure street bike market is huge right now. I mean, it's the fastest growing motorcycle segment there pretty much is. And so a lot of the sanctioning bodies are coming up with adventure classes, and so we decided to race them to really prove, I mean, there is no larger proof of using a motorcycle and abusing it than this type of rally racing or best in desert racing or off-road racing. You're basically just beating the hell out of these things, and so what happens is you gain the trust of your customers because they know that what you're doing with this thing is the ultimate challenge that you could give it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I know you guys do more than intake systems now. Over the years, you guys have developed and added more things to your product line and stuff like that. Hey, if I remember right, when I first met you too, you were having a lot of this stuff done on the outside, having other machining companies and stuff making all that stuff. How much of that stuff are you still doing today?
We brought a lot of it back in-house with the TRAK machine. So as you know, you were one of the only sales guys that I would allow in our shop because it was always fun to see you, and you visited me for years and you were great and easy to work with, and we finally got to the point where we had grown large enough to make that leap into the larger machines, which is our RMX back there and the RLX. We knew it was time to bring in those machines because a lot of our prototyping was taking months or weeks, and we needed to do this stuff within days or hours. And that was a big problem for us because a lot of our vendors were machinists that would get caught up with aerospace stuff. And when they have the aerospace stuff, that pays a lot of money, and we were dog food for these guys. And it just took a long time to get the parts, and it was really hurting us with bringing products to fruition. So, the TRAK machines were a logical move for us because we were already very familiar with them. Being that they're conversational, it's a lot easier to teach our employees how to use them. You don't have to hire a master machinist that knows G-code and Gibbs and CAM software and all this stuff. It's actually quite easy to program. So for us, being able to come up with an idea, possibly prototype it through 3D printing, try that, and then once we're ready for an actual metal prototype, to be able to get on that machine and literally within hours have an actual part that we can test in real world activities. So.
Fantastic. Well, I know that this is also a new facility for you two guys, because also when I met you, you guys were in a lot smaller building, not too far from here. Yeah, but of course, everything in here, and I watched through the revamping myself, so I saw everything they grew into. But let's do a little bit more of a tour and explain something.
Sure. So this is a state-of-the-art dyno cell with a DynoJet 250i motorcycle dyno installed in it. And this is where we do all of our testing for either our products or the aftermarket products. So a lot of aftermarket companies actually, they don't have one of these, they use one, or they have become, some of them have become reliant on us to actually test some of their products. So they'll send us prototypes and we'll put them on the motorcycles, and we'll be able to give them some reports on where the power gains are and where they're not possibly. We also use it to test our own products and do remapping of fueling to basically so we can match our products and match the fuel to the performance that our products are adding to these motorcycles. This is our production facility back here. This is basically the fabrication side of things right here. So this is all the fabrication equipment we have, and obviously over here are the TRAK machines, and we have kind of delineated by some presses and shears here. So what we have on the mill right here currently is it's a fixture that we made to machine some of our base plates. What we did is we kind of rigged up this air ram, which is one thing that was really cool about this machine is the modularity that we found with it. Mm-hmm. Whereas there was basically two auxiliary circuits, and I remember calling you up and saying, hey, I'm trying to do this thing with a tool, and before on our previous mill, we would machine one part of this thing, and honey, could you grab me one of those pieces right there? So we post-machine these things to ensure accuracy. We didn't want to mold them because sometimes these parts shrink when they're ejected out of the mold. So we wanted to post-machine the critical parts. So what we do is we lock this guy in here, and we've got two parts that we need to machine. We need to machine this part, and then we need to come up and machine this part right here. So what we did is we programmed the machine to come in. This gets all locked down, and it machines all the O-ring grooves and the holes for the velocity stacks, and then it comes over here and it actually turns on the auxiliary air, and it brings this part up like that, and then we machine this part right here. So it truly allowed us to be completely hands-off doing this, because I remember the mill we had before that didn't have the Z control. Right. It was great, but we had to control the Z, so there was probably about 12 or 15 Z movements that we had to do by hand and really watch the screen and do all this stuff. And for us, this machine was an epiphany, to basically be able to come through and drop something in there and truly walk away and just let it do its thing. So it's been fun to be able to kind of create these things. And a lot of these parts were machined on this very mill. So
I think one of the best parts of that story is the fact that when I told you how to do it and everything else, what I got next was a text with a video showing it working, and I didn't even have to come in and show you how to do that. So I thought that was pretty neat that it was simple enough, figured it out on your own, and it gave you that idea. Of course, as you know, one of the reasons you got into using TRAK machines is because they're really designed for prototyping and stuff like that. But you actually do some semi-production on here as well, don't you?
We do. We do. We actually have, one thing we really like about this particular machine is the generous X travel that it has. So a lot of other larger CNC machines Granted, they've got some tool changers, which is great, but their work area, the travel is 24 by 20 or something like this, quite small. With this, you know, we have 60 inches on the X. So we tend to make these very long tools to where we have to change the tools by hand. So it prompts us and we come in and change them. But we're able to put so many parts on one 60-inch long tool that we can walk away for much longer. We're not doing 1 or 2 parts, we're doing 15 at one time. So we program this thing and it's fairly easy because we'll program one and then just input a repeat command, which is super easy. We just say repeat this X amount of times and Bob's your uncle, it's all done.
And that's cool. And you know, I think one of the other great parts about your story really is the fact that you really aren't a machinist.
No, I was a fabricator. Any good fabricator really should understand machines. You have to have the machines to augment what you do as a fabricator. So a lot of times it's really hard to, you'll find a fabricator. I mean, it starts out, you'll find a welder, and that's all the guy is a welder. It's like, you bring me the parts, I'll weld them. Then a fabricator is basically a welder that can solve puzzles, okay? And then a good fabricator is a fabricator that can solve puzzles that can also machine. So if you can machine little bits and widgets and little things to kind of augment what you're fabricating, it's a good thing. The problem is that, a lot of these more advanced machines with, where you have to know all this G code and they've got these, 500 buttons on the thing, and it's a little bit intimidating for somebody who's not doing that full time. For somebody like us who's not a full-time machinist, we're not a machinist job shop. We need these things on the side. We need to be able to get over here and easily program it, and I need to be able to basically show my employees or educate my employees fairly quickly, and that's where the conversational comes in really handy because it's more English. You don't have to hire somebody who's a specialized machinist who knows the G code and knows $15,000 worth of software just to be able to program it. It's really fairly straightforward on how to program these things. So that's helped quite a bit. And so we actually do use these for production for, basically when we're doing, multiple parts. There's one particular part, we'd order 2,000 of those little plates that I showed you. We'd order 2,000 at a time and they were $2 a piece. Fine, great. But I'd go pick up 4 boxes that are 12 by 12 by 12, $4,000. Okay, and that was rough, okay. He'd put 500 in each box. Well, we made a tool that was 60 inches long, okay, that does, I think, 128 of these at a time, wow. Okay? We calculated that this machine was saving us $200 an hour.
Wow. Doing
them in-house. It cost a few $100s. It was basically just the cost of material and the cost to pay my employees X amount of hours to machine these parts. So we went from $4,000 for 2,000 pieces to about maybe under 1,000.
So in a nutshell, I guess what you're telling me is that contrary to what a lot of our competitors like to say, this thing is not a toy.
Not at all.
But you can use it to make a lot of toys.
Oh, sure.
Because you're making toys for big people who are really, really enjoying it. And I noticed before we got here today, you had quite a few people coming in here just to learn more about what you guys do, buy some products and get ready for their bike too. And I think the fact that you can help them from start to finish and help them build something nobody else has and really enjoyable when you get out there on the weekends, I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate the two of you guys taking the time to show us and the rest of the world out here on what you guys do. It's really cool, and thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Always good to see you.
You betcha. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. On behalf of the whole crew here from Rottweiler Performance in Costa Mesa, California, we want to thank you for watching this video. Hope you learned a lot from it. If you're into adventure bikes, I hope you give these guys a call and they'll help you out. Until we see you in the next video, remember as always to
keep on tracking.